All right, guys, so what is a Zentangle? So this is what we're going to do to practice basically making patterns in a smaller scale. So with op art, it was more about big scale, kind of like backgrounds and lines. And now we're talking a little bit more about shapes and individually sort of separating those things and repeating them over and over again to create a pattern. So we were creating patterns last time, but now we're going to focus on small scale pattern ideas. The reason why we do this too is this is the beginning of like, I can't draw, but I'm starting to actually draw things. And I'm not just using typography and lettering, but I'm actually making sort of objects and subject matters, which is a word that we're going to get into and dig really deep into when we do the sketchbook for this round. So we actually are learning two techniques with this one, and then we're doing the sketchbook. So if you're watching this now, we're going to talk about how to make a Zentangle, right? So Zentangles, if you look at my screen right now, are about using a simple sort of like over and over again repetitive shape or pattern inside of a more complex idea. For the practice round, we're literally going to do this inside of simple basic shapes. So what does that look like? Not inside of a subject matter. That's what we're doing here for this assignment. So if you look at these, you will see that they're just inside of a square, right? These are just repetitive shapes and lines, and then things are colored in. And that is the thing right here that we're talking about. So when we talked about in class was different types of patterns and different kinds of shapes and different kinds of lines. A good Zentangle has a combination of at least two of these things. So if you look at all of these, there is some kind of combination of repetitive shape and repetitive line, and then something is colored in. Repetitive shape, repetitive line, and something is colored in over and over again. That's how you make a good pattern. You can look at all of these and see it. This one right here, it's circles that are colored in. It's these lines right here, and then these negative shapes of these squares in between, right? It's line, shape, pattern of some kind, and colored in. It's really basic. So everything that you see, there's 3 pages of this uploaded for you guys to look at. I even put these inside the circles as well to show you these patterns. Also because there's some things on these patterns that I would probably add more to, and that's what I want to use in my example. All right, so I want you to know that I'm looking at these two right here to kind of talk about what we can do more of, right? So these two right here are a combination of line and their combination of shape, but there's not the coloring in, and I would definitely add some color to every other or something to create these and make them look better. So I'm going to use one of these as my example for the circle, and then I'm going to use one of these other ones as my example for the square. You can do either or. So in your sketchbook, you're going to draw 5 circles or squares or a combination of the two, but you're going to make 5 Zentangle patterns. So I'm going to do this first one. This first one here, it is literally just, it's a bunch of lines that go like this across this area, like that. And then it is diagonal lines that are going every other direction, like this, back and forth. Right? And that's all the pattern was in the example. For the sake of making this a little bit of a better pattern than what we learned with op art and kind of making things look a little bit more interesting, I would simply come through and fill in every other one and color it in. And that would bring just a little bit more contrast to this overall piece, right? This is already a pretty cool thing. Something else I could do. So I could fill in every other. Or at each junction, meaning where 2 lines meet, I could create like another shape. And even that helps and makes this a little bit more interesting. And I know my hand is kind of covering it, the cursive being left-handed, but I wanted to get those done before I showed it. You could even do a combination of both of these ideas too. Doesn't even have to be just one or the other, right? But there is me taking that pattern that I showed you and making it a little bit better. Okay, so now I'm going to do another one. This is from one of the squares. I see this one a lot every year, and I want to show you it. It's where you do this thing, and the one that I have inside the thing is like inside of shapes. It is like, okay, so then what I would do is I would come back through and I do this thing where you do circles. I see students do this one a lot, little like half circles. The thing that makes this one look nice is when you decide to fill things in even more, because even that looks pretty good, right? But what happens if I come through and I fill in this circle, and then maybe even when I do it over here, I think the one I have in the example is like every other square is actually the whole thing is shaded too. So it's like you fill this one in too. Well, then there's this light tone shaded over every single square like this as well. And this one doesn't have that tone. It's just the dark black like that, right? So you're making patterns inside of patterns. This is what Zentangles is all about. It's about just simple line control, but then you fill in and you color in and you kind of add that extra little bit of detail. And then, like I said, I'm doing these kind of like light and sketchy. I would definitely come back through. I would definitely recommend the ruler again on this one. If you're not good at making your own clean straight lines and kind of cleaning them up like I'm doing right now, because this always looks nice when it's clean and it's precise and it looks like it's done on purpose. Okay, so like I said, I'm gonna say it again, you're doing 5. They can be either in a circle or in a square. I use my ruler for this one. I actually used a cup for this one. I just took like an old Dickies cup or like, like a big like drink cup or whatever, maybe like a Quick Trip cup or something. And I just traced the bottom of that to make that circle. Or if you have a protractor or whatever other fancy thing you might have. But that's it, guys. 5 Zentangle patterns of any kind, shape, or form. Pencil, marker, everything is up for grabs, just like with op art.